Today we're going to start talking about circles, and we're going to start by identifying the different parts of a circle. We'll want to have these in our notes, but you'll also notice on your Canvas page that I have some of these prepared for you. So if you want to follow along and if you like to write these down, that is completely up to you. So we're all familiar with the shape of a circle. Circle has a center, and then it's just infinite number of points away from that center. But what we need to recognize are a couple of words you should be familiar with. And first of all is the radius of a circle. The radius of the circle is a segment or a length of the segment from the center of the circle to any point on the circle. It doesn't matter the radius's difference, they should all be the same, otherwise we do not have a circle. So the first thing we have is a radius, and again it goes from the center to any point on the circle. The second one, again we should know this one as well, is the diameter is a segment as well, or a length of segments that contains the center of the circle and two endpoints on the circle. So what we have to have on a diameter, what we'll learn is that's called a chord, but on our circle, it needs to touch our edges, and at the same time, it has to cross through the center. Got to meet both of those criteria. The next definition we're going to see is a chord, which is a segment as well, whose endpoints are on the circle. Now, if that sounds very much like what we said about a diameter, well, it is, but the only difference between just being classified as a chord is a diameter must go through the middle of the circle. A chord does not, so this chord can touch any two edges of the circle. Now, the diameter is the longest chord that we can construct. Next thing you see is the arc, which is part of the circle, consisting of 2 points on the circle and the unbroken part of the circle between these 2 points. So when we see the arc, we'll be familiar with what we see. So that's going along the edge of the circle. Again, the whole thing around would be called a circumference. We'll talk about that later. But first of all, we're just talking about the arc. And we will also decipher how we will name arcs, because that's important. On this page, we see the definition of a circle as a set of all points in a plane at a given distance from a point in the plane. Fancy way of saying that. Again, we have a center in this part. But the main thing I want to see is this, is a line and segment that intersects the circle that has, have a special name. This is called a tangent line. So what I think of when I think of a tangent line is like a rock skipping across water, but this segment is skipping across the edge of the circle. Remember, the chord is the one that hits the two ends here, starts here and finishes here. We'll learn what it's called in a moment when it passes through, not just sits on the edge. But a tangent line is just a line that skims the edge of the circle, and there's only 1 point of intersection. So here are the names of the circles we were talking about. One that's often mistaken are these two right here, the chord and a secant line. The difference between the chord and a secant line is, remember, a chord is a segment. So it's going to start and end on the circle, and a secant line is going to pass right through. So we can see over here, we've got these highlighted, the yellow. That is our example of a chord. And then our secant line, again, passes right through. Touches two edge, but passes right through. And then the last one is the tangent line. We did see a picture of this, but that is our tangent line. And then in other words, you see that intersection is called the point of tangency. So this is a formula, not formula sheet, but this is a sheet that I put together as well for you guys on the Canvas page. You got this from Delta Math, so you guys might see this as well. But here's all of our parts to our triangle. Of course, the center, pretty self-explanatory, same distance from any point on the triangle. Our radius line segment that runs from the center of the triangle to any point on the triangle. The diameter is a chord that runs through the center of the circle. Remembering the relationship between a radius and a diameter. Remember, it's a 2-to-1 ratio between the two of those things. And then, like we said, a chord is a segment that is 2 points on a given triangle. So those are what those 4 elements look like: center, radius, diameter, and a chord. And then here are the parts you might want to get down. And again, I have this for you so you don't have to go looking too far. But a central angle, an angles whose vertex is a given circle's center and whose legs are sides that intersect the circle. You could also go a little further and say that its legs are radiuses. But remember that we have radii on throughout our circle here, so its legs are going to be radius, and they should be equal. But that's called a central angle. Now, an inscribed angle is an angle whose vertex lies on a given circle and whose legs of the sides intersect the circle at 2 points. These actually cannot be radius. The legs can't be radiuses, otherwise it would be at the center. So this just means it lays on the outside. This is called an inscribed angle. Has to be laying on the circle. Secant line, we've already talked about that, but there's another example. It's a line or array that intersects a given circle at more than 1 point. And then lastly, a tangent line, a line or array that intersects a given circle only at 1 point, even if extended. So those are all of the parts of our circle. Again, look back and reference those notes that I gave you if you do run into any issues. And the last thing we're going to take a look at today is first arc marks. We can see we have 3 of these arcs. And we're going to talk about how we are going to name these arcs. A lot of different ways you can name them, but there's also appropriate and inappropriate ways to name those. So this is called a minor arc because it's less than 180 degrees. And it says we've highlighted this RH. Way we can name this arc, we always put this symbol over top of an arc. And the arc is named by capital letters. So this arc can really only be named in 2 ways. You could name it arc RH, or you could name it arc HR. There's really no other ways to name this arc. The next one that we see here is a major arc. Reason why it's a major arc is because it's extending more than 180 degrees. When we name a major arc, we have to name it with 3 points, unless it's exactly 180. Because if I just said arc FY, we are assuming that we are going to take and just go from F to Y, which is not the arc that is obviously being highlighted here. So what we have to do when we name a major arc is we have to name a point that it passes through. So it basically is letting whoever's reading understand the direction in which we are going. So this one has numerous names. We could name this arc F, and I use the verbiage like I'm going to say, F passing by H going to Y. This also could be that written backwards, Y passing by H going to F. We are not going to write the reverse of all of these because there are a lot of different arcs we can have. So the other thing we could say is arc, F passing by Z going to Y. And we could also say arc F passing by W going to Y. These are all appropriate names for this arc. These are all appropriate names for this arc. We cannot just say Y, F. We have to tell us the direction in which we are going. And then you notice we have one more sitting over here. This is a minor arc. So the way I would name this is arc PM. That is all, or MP, either one of these two things will work. Because it is a minor arc, we assume that we are going to take the appropriate direction. If I don't put F or J, then I am not going to go that direction. I'm going to take the shortest route. If you think about it, if someone were giving you directions to go somewhere and they wanted you to go out of your way, they would tell you to do that. You know, if it's like, I need you to come by my house and you live 2 miles away, but I need you to stop by Taco Bell. Okay, then I need that instruction. I'm not going to go by Taco Bell without you giving me the instruction. Now, it is not wrong to name a minor arc with 3 points. It is just completely unnecessary. So I could name this arc PVM. From P, passing by V, going to M. That is not wrong, but it is completely unnecessary. All right, so that's how we name arcs. Those are our different parts of circles. You have a Delta math assignment. Got a lot of questions, but you should be able to move through those pretty fluently. Good luck.